Hi, welcome back to Making Sense Conversations, the podcast. My name is Washeken Dwati. Today, I want to talk about exhaustion and money. And this is a theme I'm going to talk about for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And in case you haven't seen it on social media, on December 6th at the Capital Club, we're having an event on exhaustion, the extreme financial sport of being a woman. Please look for it. Please register. And we're going to have a great conversation with you guys, with Laimani Bidali of Alabastron and myself and other speakers who are going to be sharing their experience. So please look out for it. But today, I just want to tell you why I've been feeling that this is a subject that needs to be tackled amongst women. I mean, we always talk about the many roles that women play. And what we're not talking about is exhaustion. And in this last couple of months, as I talk to women and I meet many of them, a lot of them, do they know the dreams they want to have? Yes. Do they have an idea of the goals? Yes. Do they have self-belief? Yes. What they are stuck in the middle of is being exhausted handling a lot. So just look at it this way. Imagine if you went for a job, you passed the interview. Month 1, you worked. Month 2, you worked. Month 3, you worked. No pay. Month 4, you kept working. No pay. Month 5, you worked. No pay. No pay. And then after some point, it just becomes normalized. So you just work without pay. Everybody expects you to work without pay. You start expecting yourself to work with pay. Then you even buy into the reasons why you should work without pay. You're so lucky to have a computer. You're so lucky to be in this building. You know, before you, all women have worked without pay, so you should also work without pay. Other people are counting on you, and so on and so forth. This is just the system that is in place. So we just normalize working without pay. And I think for us women, that's where we've become exhausted. And no matter what financial role you play in your family, in your society, in your community, amongst women, we have women who it's a single household. They are the ones managing the whole household by themselves. They are single. They are single by choice. They are single by circumstance. They are separated. They are divorced. They are widowed. They are single. So they are just managing everything. Then there are others who are the breadwinners. So they carry the house financially. And when they get home, they also have to do a lot of other things, that are required or expected of women to run a household. Others are co-contributors, almost a balanced financial relationship, but not quite balanced because they get home and they have to do all the other chores that are expected of them to do or they expect of themselves to do. Others are what we call full-time moms or stay-at-home parents, and they do a lot. And no matter what role you find yourself playing, there's a lot that is expected of you. I remember once being in a board meeting, and my house help texted me and said, gas imeisha. And for 5 minutes, my mind moved away from the board meeting and had to go into how do I organize gas on the go now, because I know what drama there'll be if there's no gas, there's no food, etc. And that movement of thought requires energy. So we do this over and over and over again in so many capacities. You go and do homework. You go sort out the house. You go sort out the bills. You go sort out your domestic help. You've got family who depend on you. Maybe you're the one taking care of your elderly parents. So outside the work and outside of the business itself, which still is taking a lot from you, there are just so many other things. And we grew up observing our mothers do this. So it's fine. We normalized it. But we're also in a different time where we're taking on so much more in professional lives, in business lives, and there just doesn't seem to rebalance it. So we found ourselves exhausted. So sometimes you're wondering, I have goals, I have dreams, I've had them for 5 years. Why can't I move towards them? Or you find yourself burnt out. You're like, I can't get out of bed. Or you find yourself saying things like, I just can't be bothered. That's exhaustion. And that's what we want to talk about. But today, I want to give, after talking, and even as I prepare for December 6th, I'm talking to so many women. And there are 4 things I want us to start doing as women, because this is us to take care of, because it is us who play these roles. It is, and I've not even mentioned even half the things that women are doing to sometimes just survive or to make things work, to keep everybody balanced to the point that we forget ourselves. So I'm just going to talk about 4 things today, and it leads to money, because when you're exhausted, something is not happening financially. It doesn't mean you have to make all the money in the world, but sometimes why you're not achieving certain things is because of all these other things, because we only have so much energy, we only have so many hours in a day. So, 1, admit you are exhausted. Admit you are exhausted to yourself. If you have a close support group of fellow women, admit to them you are exhausted. And we have to start there, because a lot, and if I look at myself, I didn't want to admit for a long time I was exhausted. Because why? You're just supposed to do it. Who are you to get exhausted? Others have done it before. And some of you may be living what looks like a good life. You have a good house, you have a good job, your kids are going to school. It is so you have, why do I even have a right to be exhausted? What about that other woman who doesn't have anything? But you can't compare exhaustion. It is what it is. So admit you are exhausted, because until you admit you are exhausted, you won't actually do anything about it. And we cheat ourselves. We should just get over it. But there's no getting over it. And some of you, I'm talking to you, and I've talked to some women, they now admit they've been there for 10 years, some 5 years, some 2 years. Even if you've been there 3 months, that is still a thing where you feel you're showing up, but you're not really showing up. So admit you are exhausted. And I'm going to tell you have a right to be exhausted. Let's not stop buying into this because you're a woman. You should keep playing this extreme sport and not be exhausted. You're a human being after all. And it's time to start understanding sometimes the investment has exceeded the returns. You've invested a lot, but what you thought was going to come back to you out of this investment and fill you up hasn't actually come. Maybe you've invested in so many things, but the way you thought it was going to turn out, the way you thought it was fill you up, the way you thought it was going to give you energy, the way you thought it was going to give you peace, the way you thought it was going to give you joy has not worked out. And I think even as I talk to women are just finding themselves in so many situations with their careers, with their relationships, with their kids, with their society, with the community, so many things. And sometimes investments have just exceeded returns. Let's call it what it is. And then we can investigate why it is that. The second thing is, as I have learned, we have to investigate the compulsion to stay exhausted. That thought that is going through your head, you should, but you should be able to handle it. Who said? You should be able to carry all the roles. Who said? You are the one to always do homework. Who said? You are the one to keep managing the house. Who said? You may choose to do it. There's a difference between choosing to do it, but simply following a thought process or a belief system that is all about obligation. You should. Where is that coming from? Sometimes it's just simply what you observe. Then understand that is what I was taught to do. So sometimes it's not even the people in our lives that are a problem at all. Many times it's not. It's you thought you should be the one to do it. So you never actually raised your hand and said, I need help, or created a boundary. You thought you should be available for your kids 24/7. If they come barging in your room at 12 midnight, so be it. Who said? That is what is making you exhausted, because you don't sleep properly. Your sleep is interrupted. Yeah. So who said? Who said it is you who has to be paying that black tax all the time? Who said? So we've got to go back and ask why it is high group. Why? It was tradition. Why? And then ask yourself, does it actually work for you? You should be the breadwinner, but still go home and do everything else the house requires. Who said? And then if someone actually did tell you that, do you agree? And it's time to burst the bubble on some things. You don't have to agree to anything. Remember, your choice is your choice, but make an empowered choice where you're saying, actually, it's me who chooses it. And that's fine. But if you're living a life that is on the basis of you're expected to, we've got to start nipping that in the bud, because we are exhausting ourselves. Thirdly, we've not learned to fill our cup. Because you do all these things, you deserve a break. I still meet women who are so guilty about having a Netflix and chill day, or guilty about taking a trip, or guilty about going over the weekend and spending some time by themselves, or guilty about, I'm not going to go for the family function this weekend. I know you were told you must attend, but you're a grown woman. You don't have to attend. What does it take to fill your cup? Because your cup needs to be filled. Years ago, I started going to the coast by myself for almost a whole week. Phone off, everything off, because that's and that's just one of the ways I fill my cup. So I'm going to ask you, what does it actually take to fill your cup? This has to be about you, not anybody else. And if you've not been doing this, when you do start it, please note you will feel very guilty about it, because rarely will you be given permission for it. Rarely will there be cheerleaders out there clapping for you because you have decided to fill your cup. No one will give you permission, not your kids, sometimes not your spouse, not your job, not your business. But the most important person is you. You have to give yourself permission. How do you fill that cup? How do you actually rest? Real rest. Real rest. Being at home does not mean rest. So if you decide to be at home, what are the boundaries you are putting so that you actually rest? Are you saying nobody enters this room for 3 hours because I am actually resting? Are you starting to say, okay, this thing of being in the supermarket every week, it's not going to be me. I am going to delegate. I'm going to use convenience. I'm going to teach my house how to do. We have to learn how to fill your cup. Now, I want you all that time outside your normal business activity or career activity. I want you to value that time, because let's go back to a job that you're not paid for. I just want you to understand, because when we say exhaustion is linked to money and your financial life going forward, it is true, because when you're exhausted, especially for women, we carry everything with us. That means you won't have energy to go look at that property deal that day. You won't have energy to think about what your business could do. You won't have energy to do the important things, and especially the thinking, the reflection, the research, the talking to, the going to meet, the things that are required for your now financial goals to move forward. You stay stuck. And when you stay stuck, sometimes that's when you start believing that somebody else will sort it out for you. Women sometimes delegate financial decisions simply because they are too exhausted to handle them, or too exhausted to confront what they need to confront so that they can handle those financial decisions. But sometimes it's just easier to delegate because you're doing so many things. And in that delegation, later on, you come and find so many things were done badly. They were hidden from you. It's not the right direction. You're now in a situation where your debt has piled on and piled on and piled on, and you weren't aware, and now you're responsible for paying it off simply because you are running around doing all this. So, let's say you earn 100,000 shillings per month. 100,000 shillings every month enters your bank account. I'm just using 100,000 shillings for ease of calculation. And you work 8 hours a day, which is 40 hours a week, which is 160 hours a month. If you calculate your hourly rate, that is 625 shillings per hour. Now, you leave the office and every day you come and do about 3 to 4 hours of something else. So if we were to say, for example, 4 hours, by the time you come home, you're sorting out your family, you're sorting out your kids, you're calling your parents, everything. Yeah? That's another 4 hours of work you are doing. It is not rest. All that is not rest. That is why we're exhausted, because rest does not mean, when you leave the office, does not mean you've gone home to rest. You've gone home for your second job. Yeah? So, if it's 4 hours, that means if we use the same rate of 625 shillings, I hope we're together, that means it is 2,500 shillings a day. And maybe you can decide for yourself, is that work harder? Is it easier than my office work? Yeah, and then adjust accordingly. But now I'll just use the same rate. It's 2,500 a day. Now, what I want you to understand is that had you been in a position where you had that time, you could have earned 2,500 shillings. But no, you're doing all this unpaid work. So now if you multiply by 30, that is 75,000 shillings per month of unpaid work. Of unpaid work. And you do the calculation. You do what you earn. Some people, it will end up being 10 times that. Some people, it will end up being 300,000 shillings. Some people, it will end up being 50,000 shillings. But there is a value. So what I want you to understand is there is a value. We have been told not to value it. We have been taught not to value it. But there is a value. So if you understand everything else you are doing, because it requires skill, it requires time, it requires expertise, it requires is effort. That's because there's no degree called that. It doesn't mean it doesn't require a skill. It does require a skill. Organization, teamwork, all that, it still requires a skill that you are using. It is worth 75,000 a month. How are you going to start valuing it? How are you going to start valuing it? Because the opportunity cost, now when you put it in money terms, is that. And sometimes when you realize, why am I not being able to make more money? Why am I not getting my side hustle off the ground? I wanted to do side work. I wanted to do this. I wanted to invest in property. Because if I used that time to research on investments, I would probably in the long term have made 75,000 shillings a month. But I don't have that time. Because there's an opportunity cost. What are you going to do to rebalance? So one, you reap some of the monetary awards. Maybe you start delegating some of these things. Maybe you give yourself some time to rest. Yeah. How are you going to reap the rewards of the value of the investment you are making? Whether it's through refreshing yourself and whether it's through releasing time. So indeed, your financial goals can be met. And ladies, we have to start being unapologetic about this. So that when people in our lives demand of us, we can say, listen, that has a value. So what is the exchange? There can't be nothing coming back to you. So is support coming back to me? Is my cup being filled somehow? Is money coming back to me? I've worked with some stay-at-home women and they've gone through Centonomy, and after that they've been able to realize my work has value. So as much as I'm not the one going to office to earn money, because of the time and effort I'm doing in arranging the family, the kids, the household, my husband is able to hold down that job, do those hours and earn the money. So that is an hour income, not a single income. So I should also have money come into my pocket every month of a certain amount of money from that salary. So wherever you are, what is it? How is that value going to be compensated? Maybe you're a breadwinner and it has to be compensated by rebalancing of roles. If you are the one holding down the household financially, maybe it's time to start rebalancing the roles and having that discussion of saying, okay, then you take up homework duties because you're able to be at home at this time. So you take up homework duties. So there's no formula, but I'm hoping with the start of these conversations, we are going to address what women have been talking about since time immemorial, but not really doing anything. We are playing many roles. Women have found themselves exhausted. That exhaustion is holding them back from personal dreams and ambitions they may want to have. That's not okay with me. I don't know if it's okay with you, but that's not okay with me. So how do we rebalance? What are the conversations that need to have? What do we confront? Because your time, your effort, your skill in all these roles has a value. Please keep joining me in the next couple of episodes as we talk about this more. And remember, December 6th, Capital Club, register, go to the flyer on social media and register and book your place so that we can really talk about the extreme financial support of being a woman. Thank you very much.